Hello. I told my US team that I was presenting at BAFTA today, and from the emails I got overnight, I think they literally think I'm presenting the BAFTAs. We have to be really careful of the photos we tweet later. I might have to doctor some of them. I'm not Joanna Lumley. I'm Simon Walker. I'm the CEO and founder of MadeThorn. We are the world's first and only specialist incubator for passion niche video services. Over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our philosophy, the journey that led to what we do. I'll need the dobber, won't I? And the rules of the game. And it might lead you to conclude that there's a good reason there's only one specialist incubator of online video services. So we talk about global passion niches. Before we get into this, can we roll VT? And I'll give you an example of one we made earlier, Marquee TV.
This is what I would want to see on stage. The impossible stuff.
Here we go. So Marquee is about bringing together the greatest arts and culture content in the world in one new platform. And my team are very obsessed about making it young and cool and vibrant, and not ever to give any whiff of dead white dudes and composers. So we're not going to tell them that I put this slide up. These are a mix of dead white dudes, some of whom are composers, but there's a one odd one out. There is a free year's subscription to Marquee TV for anyone who can tell me who is the odd one out in the dead white dudes. Dead white dude, odd one out. Any takers? Well, conscious of time, it's this guy in the bottom left. He's a dead white economist, not a dead white composer. There is another year's subscription for anyone who can tell me later who all these composers are. But the guy on the bottom left is my favorite economist, dead white Italian economist, Vilfredo Pareto, who you will know from the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule. Generally, the 80-20 rule talks about the fact that 20% of causes usually deliver 80% of the effects in systems. We're really interested in, and we've kind of invented, and again, Ted had lots of proper slides. You're going to see I'm kind of, telling you a story rather than getting into the data. But we think that there is something called the Pareto passion principle, which basically says 80% of people will get everything they need from big services, like the ones we just learned about, but 20% of people will find that their particular passion isn't properly served, is underserved by the mainstream services. And to give you a flavor of what that's like, I'm going to take you for a walk down my high street. Where I live in North London, in Little Venice, this is Clifton Road, we've got a Tesco, and 80% of people get all their shopping there. And that's fine, and they do a pretty good job. We also, on the other side of the road, have Clifton Greens, the little greengrocer. We have the little village butcher. We have the wine shop. There's a bakery. There's a deli. 20% of people go to these places to buy their food. They might buy the odd thing in Tesco. They might buy their loo roll and their washing up liquid. But when it comes to the things that they really care about, they'll buy their vegetables here, even if it's the same vegetables from the same supplier as Tesco have. Why do they do that? The reason is passion. If you're passionate about wine, or if you're passionate about vegetables, or if you're passionate about anything, frankly, content, then it means something to have it curated in a way which is really meaningful to you and speaks to your passion too. And consumers can smell the big bucket of stuff. They can smell when it's just been packaged together. Oh, we've done a category for you guys because you like anime or you like ballet. And they can also tell when something's been properly packaged and branded and created and curated for them. And that's what we try and do at MadeThorn when we build brands. That's what Marquee is trying to do. So that's kind of the philosophy. And again, I want to tell the story of kind of how we came to that philosophy. I've been doing online video for a long time. The organizers wanted me to share a little bit of the story of how we came to this view. I've never shared these before. Well, I've never shared the one on the left before. So this is a first. You won't be excited, but I am. This is the letter from April 1998 from the BBC board instructing me, little Simon Walker, little 29-year-old strategist, to pull together the BBC's on-demand strategy. Because we'd just been to see Google when there were about 4 of them in a room, me and John Burt, and we thought this is kind of interesting. That led to some good work, led to iPlayer, led to UView, led to some really, really great new services. I don't always get it right. The other thing that I worked on was this thing called the 100 Tribes, which was a total disaster. And this was my boss, Matthew, trying to explain why it was all cool. That bit of work, and it's interesting here, he says, in an ideal world, we should have 56 million tribes, because there were 56 million Britons in 1998, 2000. But of course, that's impossible. Well, he didn't know Facebook was going to arrive. But the work we were doing then was to, instead of looking at audience groups by demographics, social economics, kind of what they like in terms of content that we produce, it was trying to drill down into their passions, what drove people and what really inspired them. And I led that work. Nothing really ever came of it. And it was, consigned to history. So this led to some good stuff. This led not to good stuff. But it sparked a thought in my mind. And 10 years later, I worked for a company called EMAP. I was the group strategy director at EMAP PLC. And we had some big brands, but actually, the thing that drove all the money were these brands, bird watching and model railways and beekeeping and things like that. We were a scale business made up of a lot of passion niches. And my job as group strategy director was to go and find the editor of Trout and Salmon and say, dude, you've done an amazing job owning the trout and salmon fishing market. These customers buy the same magazine every week, actually, and they mostly subscribe, and it's brilliant, and we make so much money. There's this thing called the internet. If we could put this on the internet, we could make a global brand for trout and salmon fishermen and women. And of course, it was a hiding to nothing, because they're magazine editors, and rightly so, they didn't really, get what I was talking about. So that was a failure. This was maybe a failure, maybe a success. We ended up selling EMAP, making our shareholders a load of money, but never really fulfilling that prophecy, or the potential, rather. So when we sold EMAP in 2008, I set up MadeThorn, because I believe this stuff, even if no one else did. And we set up MadeThorn to incubate businesses in global passion niches. I'd seen how EMAP had built, over 100 years, a super scale, a billion-plus business with lots and lots of little niches. And I knew that if you could use the internet and the power of social media to drive that, then you were onto something here. And no one else seemed to be doing it. Oh, and by the way, as we just heard from Ted, if you're not one of the big guys, you're probably lost. The big guys have won. The guys, the people in the middle, the terrestrial broadcasters trying to reinvent what you called virtual pay TV, All4 or BritBox or ITV Hub or whatever, it's okay, but you're in the kill zone. What's going to happen at the other end is passion niches are going to pop up, and we'd like to build some and help create some. Now, the secret sauce. Is there any secret sauce? I'm not sure, and I'm going to be really conscious to leave some good time for questions at the end. So I'll just try and summarize it real quick. What we learned at MadeThorn, again, here are 2 things that we did. One, as I always do, a success. One, a total failure, because being an entrepreneur, you've got to embrace the failures. The first business we built was called Love Home Swap. It's not really a content business at all, but it's a passion niche. We discovered these guys who, when they go on holiday, they swap homes with each other. We saw a movie called The Holiday, where Kate Winslet and Cameron Diaz swap homes, and freeze-framed the movie, and found there was this weird websites, and people would swap homes and go on holiday. And that is a niche passion for people. It's too niche for me, by the way, even though I co-own the business. But we built that into a successful niche and sold it a couple of years ago. The other one that we did, literally, I think this was 2010, 2011, I was running around with Julian, the co-founder, talking to ITV and people, trying to license all of their content, was an idea called Time for Telly. The niche in 2011 were people who would watch their TV online. And we decided we'd aggregate a service. We'd seen Netflix in the States. They're not in the UK yet. Let's roll up the space before they do. Annoyingly, once we'd signed all our deals with NBC and ITV and everybody, they called us up a couple of months later to say, yeah, we had a guy from Netflix come and he's offered us real money. So the deal's off. So this didn't happen. But what it did was teach us how to do this properly. And what Marquee has done is identify, we call it super serving the underserved, as I say. If you're into opera, ballet, dance, theatre, documentaries, if you're passionate about that subject, you might be able to find that stuff on YouTube. You might be able to find it on Netflix or Amazon Plus. And hopefully you'll find it on those brands under our brand in the years to come. But no one's curating it and pulling it together. And what we found is, as we went to explore building this service, that there are some rules of the game. And the rules of the game are these. You need to genuinely identify an underserved market. And we see niche services in, I don't know, history or football or whatever. Those are not underserved markets. There are pretty good services out there for them. But if you can genuinely find a segment like arts and culture, which is underserved, that's interesting. And often they come with underexploited rights because they maybe used to sell things to DVD. That market's gone away. The mainstream broadcasters aren't buying them. They're all fighting for this middle ground, the mixed genre route or drama. And therefore, you can actually pick up rights and IP relatively straightforwardly. But the number 3 is the thing that's really interesting. In these segments which are passion-led, you can pre-aggregate consumers. If I wanted to build, back to my wine shop in my local high street, those guys, you can find people who are interested in wine because they subscribe to wine clubs or they're on wine newsletters. They've already predefined themselves as fans of this kind of content, super fans. If you're in the arts world, if you're a Royal Opera House member, friend, you're paying £200 a year already to the Royal Opera House just to be a friend of the Royal Opera House. There are tens of thousands of people who do that. They don't really get much for that. But if we can now provide Royal Opera House content for them, well, that's interesting. And the 4th thing is the thing that makes these niches defensible as a startup. They link to in-person activity. If you care about the opera, you probably go to the opera as well as watching it at home. If you care about fishing, you probably go fishing. So genres need to be identifiable by those categories. And my final test for these things is, would it work even if you didn't have any video? Even if there was no content? Could you build a service, an app, an SVOD brand, whatever it might be, or a brand that looks like an SVOD brand that actually didn't have any subscription video in it? It was just a subscription on-demand service. What does that mean? Well, I could imagine providing an app for arts and culture users that aggregates together their tickets, their memberships of these organizations. It could have a loyalty scheme in it. It could enable them to buy their drink at an interval, et cetera, et cetera. Those are services that could exist. If you then layer content on top of them, they become really powerful and interesting economic models and business models. So those are our kind of tests for the rules of the game. And when we'd got Marquee launched, one of the other MadeThorn partners was knocking around the office, and she tapped me on the shoulder and heard me doing this pitch and said, do you know what else is an underserved global market? Country music, at which point we should roll VT2.
Actually see it come to life and to see how many people came on a cold day in Nashville to help change lives and to help the people in need of Florida after Hurricane Michael.
That's right, in the house. And if you do fall, you better like roll. Like do something amazing. You have to
come back.
We absolutely love you. We
No, you're so great people, so I have to be there.
Hey, this is the Cadillac 3. I feel like if I'm playing a ballad, I can hear a pin drop. If I'm playing a fun one, they want to dance. Like, they're just so interactive.
What pets did you have when you were growing up?
Dogs,
Just lots of dogs.
chickens, horses.
Nice. On a
Pigs.
proper farm. Texan boy, I like that. What?
Got my album coming out in May, and it's going to be like the biggest thing I've ever done, ever. It's like the thing that I've been working towards for 2 years, so I'm so excited about it.
I wanna stick around long enough to see those brand new blue jeans fade.
Now that might be too niche for you guys, but let me tell you, the fastest growing music genre in the UK and a lot of international markets is country music. The fastest growing festival sector in the UK is country music. The biggest selling independent film this year is called Wild Rose, which is a country music film. The first new national radio station launched in the UK is called Country Hits Radio, and it's a country hits station. There's something interesting about that in that it's not a niche in the US, right? Country is a mainstream genre. CMT, the Viacom station in the States, is bigger than MTV, but it is a niche outside the US. So that gives us another spin on this passion, the Pareto passion principle. We can take stuff that is mainstream in the US and repackage it for international audiences and create a really efficient way to build a niche brand and a subscription brand. And again, we can sell tickets, we can have listings and gig guides. And if you're starved of this content, as UK audiences are, you can get some radio now, but you don't get to see these people. You don't get them here to talk about their music in a British environment. So that's what Country Line is doing. I'm conscious of time. I've done well. 2 minutes left. Could we do some questions? Is that all right? The future's bright. The future is passion. Hi. Go ahead. I don't know if there's a mic. There might be a mic. Camellia, there's a gentleman's in the middle. B9, I believe. I used to be an usher.
Does this mark the point then when you cease to be a sort of single niche provider and you're becoming a multiple niche provider in the model of your magazine company? Is that what you want to do ultimately?
Really good question, and it's one I don't have an answer to. At the moment, we've built these things because we're a startup, right? We are funding. There's a passion group of investors, right, as well. So we've got Elton John's one of the investors in Country Line because he loves country music. So we've funded these things bottom up. They are independent businesses at the moment, and we work with other businesses as well in science and in cricket and other places which are not our own and operated. So at the moment for us, it's been bottom up. But there could come a time where MadeThorn provides more of the services, the back office, the technical layer. We already do the social media, the finance, the legal, all of that. And that's a different way for these businesses to exit and grow potentially.
I have a question.
Yes.
Simon, one of the principles here is that if you're passionate about something, you will go and find it, pay for it, and keep on watching it. Have you found that it's impacted on the level of loyalty of your customers, the churn rates? Are you finding that actually you get people in and they tend to stay in because you keep on having a destination
again, that's
place?
a really, really important kind of observation. When we were modeling the business and we're trying to work out what the lifetime value of these customers would be,
rate,
when you go and talk to partners like Glyndebourne or the Royal Opera or whatever, and you go and ask them, okay, when people are friends of Glyndebourne, how long do they, or the Royal Operas, how long do they stay being a friend or a member? Remember, these people are paying. They're subscribers. And they looked at me a bit blankly, and I said, what do you mean? What do you mean, how long? So they stay there until they die. So the average tenure of a Royal Opera House member is basically 28 years or something.
Gosh,
so you become a member and you stay a member until you expire. Now, I'm not sure we'll be quite that successful because we've got that's one route to market. The others are selling, direct to consumers and through, I can announce here today, Marquis is going to be on Comcast TV in the States on the X1 boxes later this year. That's a world exclusive, by the way.
Congratulations.
And they will have a different, different dynamics. They're just upselling from a box. But we think people are pretty loyal, much more loyal than they would be to, kind of an all-you-can-eat drama or movies or whatever service.
That's interesting because the classic sort of averaged period of a subscription is roughly about 5 months. So presumably that's a very big incentive, is a higher customer lifetime value.
Which reminds me, sorry, one last thing. If anyone likes arts and culture or country music, we've set up a voucher code, VS 2019, for all you lucky Videoscape delegates. Is that allowed? Download the app. 6 months free. Enjoy.
Thank you. I'm already a subscriber to
Are
Lucky.
you? Yeah. Oh, well, we love you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Videoscape.
That was brilliant. Thank you. That was a really interesting walk through the journey. Thank you, Simon.